Golden Blue Dude back with another video just for you, the college football fan. So if you're a college football fan, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. That's all we do here, and go check out our Patreon page. We have a lot of great perks over there, including exclusive access to yours truly, and I call my Patreons the shot callers because that's what they do. And go check out the revamped Golden Blue Dude website, designed and created by Joey Foster. We have 9 great writers right now, led by our head writers, Michael Walker and Scotty B. the Baylor King. Today I want to talk about Georgia, and you know, a lot of people have made videos about Georgia and how they won't be as good as what they were last year, and that's the truth. And it seems like every video that I've watched that somebody's done a video on that, they get ragged on, not just by Georgia fans, by SEC fans in general, saying, what are you talking about? Georgia just won the national championship. Of course they're going to be elite again. Not so fast, my friends, not so fast. Last year Georgia had a magical year, a magical year. They had a pretty good offense. They averaged 38.6 points per game. That was number 9, but an elite defense, historically elite. They allowed 10.2 points per game, number 1, and that number would actually be much lower had the SEC championship not happened. They allowed Alabama to score over 40 points. I have my own opinion on that. I'm not going into that, but if it wasn't for that game, their average would be around 8 points per game. Think about that, 8 points per game. That's insane. And everybody was high on Georgia in the offseason last year, and it happened. This year, most everybody is a little bit lower on Georgia this year. We're not saying Georgia's going to be horrific. They're not going to make a bowl. They're going to fall off a cliff. No. They're just not going to be the Georgia from last year. That's facts. So I went back and looked at the teams that had a pretty good offense. What if they would have had Georgia's defense? Would they have had a shot to win the national championship? And I think there's several teams that would have definitely had a shot to win the national championship and straight up win the national championship had they had Georgia's defense. Tennessee comes to mind. They were number 7 in offense, 39.3 points per game, but 90th in defense. Tennessee has Georgia's defense. Yeah, they're probably going to the national championship. But along with Tennessee, Alabama most definitely would have won the national championship. They had the number 6 offense, pretty decent defense at number 18. But you jump to number 1, allowing just 10.2 points per game. Yeah, Alabama would have won the national championship. Same thing with Ole Miss. Great offense and about an average defense, and they went 10-3. Ole Miss would have gotten to the national championship, probably would have won it. Over to the Big 12, I think Oklahoma State, if they would have had Georgia's defense, national championship. Baylor, national championship. Oklahoma, definitely a national championship. I definitely think Oklahoma would have won the national championship with Georgia's defense. They had the number 8 offense last year, but their defense not good at all. The interesting thing about the ACC is I don't think Clemson would have benefited from Georgia's defense. Yes, it would have been better, but Clemson had a terrible offense. So no, I don't think Clemson would have won a national championship with Georgia's defense. Wake Forest, yes, the number 4 offense. Pitt, yes, the number 3 offense. NC State, maybe. They had the number 28 offense. North Carolina, I think they would have a great shot. They had the number 19 offense. Miami, I think they would have had a good shot. 23rd offense. In the Big 10, Ohio State, yes, the number 1 offense. Michigan, yes, the number 16 offense. Michigan State, perhaps, but their strength was on defense last year, and the number 31 offense. Now for the Pac-12, these teams might surprise you. UCLA, yes, they had the number 13 offense. Not a good defense. Utah, the number 14th offense. Not a great defense. And then there's the independent. BYU, perhaps, they had the number 29 offense. Notre Dame, I would actually say yes, they had the number 20 offense. So those were all the teams that had a pretty good offense, but just didn't have the defense to get the job done. Had they had Georgia's defense? Yes. A lot of those teams would have won the national championship, and all of them would have at least had a chance. That's how elite Georgia's defense was last year. And that's because of Georgia's margin of victory last year. If you look at when they won games, they blew people out. So yes, if you had a halfway decent offense with that historically elite defense last year, you would have had a shot to win a national championship. Fast forward to this year. 5 defensive players taken in the first round from Georgia. The defensive end, Trayvon Walker. The defensive tackle, Jordan Davis. Linebacker, Quay Walker. The defensive tackle, Devontae Wyatt. And the safety, Lewis Kine. Altogether, 15 players were taken in the NFL draft. Now, I will say this. Georgia recruits great. The number 3 recruiting class in 2022, including 5 5-stars, 4 of them on defense, and the 1 5-star that they got on offense was actually an offensive lineman. The problem with Georgia is they didn't do very well at all in the transfer portal. In fact, they didn't even register on the transfer portal. And Georgia has done pretty good in the past in the transfer portal. They grabbed Tyke Smith from my team, West Virginia, the number 1 rated safety for that year, who got injured at Georgia. JT Daniels from USC, Eric Gilbert from LSU. So in the past, yes, they've gone out and gotten some talent in the transfer portal, but the one year that they needed the most, this year, not so much. In fact, not at all. They didn't register. On top of that, one of their best wide receivers, Jermaine Burton, just won a national championship with Georgia, transferred to Alabama. Maybe he knows the writing on the wall. Maybe he knows for a fact that Georgia does not have a chance whatsoever of getting back to the national championship. He wants to go over to a team that does have a chance, well, that will get to the national championship. Alabama's going to be a great team this year. If you remember the offseason from last year, most of the defense, as far as names go, were household names when it came to Georgia's defense. This year, you look at Georgia's defense, not at all. Complete opposite this year. A lot of unknowns. I mean, Cali Ringo, he pops out the cornerback, but most of these other names are new. And I'm not saying that they're not good. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're not household names like the names that we saw from last year's defense. In fact, Georgia's offense might be the thing that has to carry them this year. That's a scary thought for Georgia fans. Yes, they were a top 10 offense last year, but your quarterback, Stetson Bennett, is not a good enough quarterback to win a game for you. He's good enough to not lose a game for you, but he's not good enough to win a game for you. And if you remember last year, there were a lot of fans, a lot of players that were mad that JT Daniels did not win back the job. They knew that JT Daniels was a better quarterback than Stetson Bennett. However, Stetson Bennett was good enough to not lose games for Georgia. Now JT Daniels is over to my team, West Virginia, and that's a big deal. A lot of people want to point out, well, he's injury prone. Yes, that is correct. But if you look at Georgia, they have a very difficult time keeping players healthy. That's another thing that's going to hurt Georgia this year. They're not going to have that elite defense to make up for the injuries that they accrue on offense. It happens year after year after year for Georgia. I don't know why, it just does. I do think that Georgia will have the best tight end group in the nation. Brock Bowers, Seether, and Eric Gilbert, all 5-star tight ends, and they'll probably get the most yardage out of any player on that offense, including the wide receivers. Georgia's offense is not catered to wide receivers. Another reason why Jermaine Burton went over to Alabama. And Georgia does have some pretty good wide receivers. McConkey, Jackson, Mitchell. They have some seriously good wide receivers over there. Problem is, that offense isn't catered to wide receivers. And on top of that, for whatever reason, wide receivers get injured over there at Georgia. So the first thing is, they got to stay healthy. Second thing is, that offense needs to be tweaked to where those wide receivers get more benefits, more balls thrown to them, more deep shots taken. And that's where Stetson Bennett comes in. He's just not good at that. That's why the offense isn't catered to that. They're trying to manage the game to cater to Stetson Bennett. And when you do that, it has the opposite effect on the wide receivers. I do think Georgia's offensive line is going to be very, very good this year, so that's one plus for Georgia. I think we'll see a run-heavy offense this year. That way, Georgia's going to try to shorten the game so there won't be as big a load on the defense this year. So you're going to see a lot of Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton, and they are good running backs, and they will be able to shorten the game. I just don't think Georgia's going to score a lot of points this year. But I just don't think that that offense is going to be good enough to make up for the talent that they lost on the defense. I just don't think that's the case this year. So do I think Georgia is going to be as good as what they were last year? Absolutely not. Do I think that Georgia is going to be horrible this year? Absolutely not. Do I think Georgia's going to fall off a cliff and have like a 7-5 or 8-4 season? Absolutely not. I just think they take a step back this year, and they're not going to stay down for long. Georgia will be back. They will be contending for a national championship in the next few years again. It's just not going to be this year. So let's take a look at Georgia's schedule for this year. How many potential losses are on their schedule? More than you think. There's that first game against Oregon in Atlanta. Look, Oregon proved that they could go on the road and beat an elite offense in Ohio State in the horseshoe. Do not take that game for granted, Georgia fans. That is a losable game. I think Georgia wins that game, but it's not a given. This isn't last year. You're not going to roll through the regular season like you did last year. That's a losable game, but I'll give it to Georgia. Next game, FCS Sanford. That's a win. At South Carolina, most definitely a losable game. It's on the road. South Carolina went out and got a ton of talent in the transfer portal. Georgia lost a ton of talent to the draft and some to the transfer portal. It's early in the season. That crowd's going to be hyped. This is a rivalry. I've predicted it before, and I'm predicting it again. I think South Carolina beats Georgia in that third game. And yes, I do think South Carolina loses to Arkansas on their road the week before. That doesn't matter. That crowd is used to losing. Georgia's coming to town. That's a big game. I think that's a win for South Carolina. After that, Georgia gets Kent State at home. That's a win. After that, at Missouri. That's a losable game, but I'll give it to Georgia. I don't think Missouri's good enough, even though it's at home, to beat Georgia, unlike South Carolina. Then they get Auburn at home, the oldest rivalry in the Deep South. This is a rivalry. Georgia is not going to be the Georgia from last year. Losable game, but I'm giving it to Georgia because it's at home. Then they get another tune-up game, Vanderbilt at home. That's a win. Then they get a much-needed bye week. After that, they get Florida in Jacksonville. I do think Florida's going to be a little bit better this year, but Georgia's still going to be leaps and bounds better than Florida, so that's a win for Georgia. After that, they get Tennessee at home. If this was a road game, I would actually straight up predict Tennessee to beat Georgia. This is a losable game for Georgia, but I'm giving it to Georgia because it is at home. After that, a road trip to Mississippi State. I think that's a losable game, but I think Georgia is the better team. It's going to be a tough road trip, but I think Georgia gets it done. After that, another road trip to Kentucky, and I think Georgia stumbles here. So I'm giving this a loss to Georgia. I think Kentucky's a good enough team to beat a down year Georgia at home. And then finally, Georgia Tech at home. I think that's a win for Georgia easy. So my official prediction for the 2022 season for Georgia is 10-2. And even if they don't lose the 2 games that I'm predicting them to lose, although I think losing at South Carolina is going to happen no matter what, there's some other losable games on there that can make up for the loss. So let's say they do beat Kentucky on the road at the end of the season, but they lose to Oregon in the first game, or they slip up and lose to Missouri on the road, or they slip up and lose to Mississippi State on the road. I think on this schedule, there are 2 losses, and one of them, I have South Carolina. The other one, probably Kentucky, but it could be somebody else. Georgia probably wins the East again, depending on how South Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee finish. They get to the SEC Championship. They're going to get beat by Alabama. Georgia will still probably get to a New Year's Six Bowl. So yes, a slight step back because they're not going to have that historically great defense this year. So yeah, our favorite out-of-control, big-time rant, Uncle Lou, will be back this year. But don't worry, Georgia fans. You will be back contending for a national championship real soon. Y'all let me know in the comments section what I got right and what I got wrong about Georgia. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.